somewhere over eastern Ukraine, at an altitude of a few dozen meters. An aircraft designed in the 1970s comes in below the tree line at close to 500 kilometers an hour, so low that its wake flattens the grass behind it. It has no stealth coating. It has no modern radar. Its avionics were conceived when the Soviet Union still existed, and its cockpit instruments are analog dials. It is being hunted by air defense systems that did not exist when it was designed, and by drones that did not exist as a category of weapon at all. It pulls up sharply, releases a French-built precision-guided bomb into a lofting arc, rolls hard, and dives back down into the terrain to escape. The aircraft is a Sukhoi Su-25, NATO reporting name Frogfoot. It first flew in 1975. It has been called obsolete for at least 20 years, and it is flying combat missions today on both sides of the largest land war in Europe since 1945. To understand why the Su-25 exists, you have to understand the problem the Soviet Air Force identified in the late 1960s, which was almost exactly the problem the United States identified at the same time. Modern jet fighters had become too fast to support ground troops. An aircraft designed for supersonic interception cannot loiter above a battlefield, cannot see a target on the ground clearly at the speeds it flies, and cannot survive the volume of small arms and light anti-aircraft fire that a contested front line generates. What ground forces actually needed was a slow, heavily armored aircraft that could work below the weather, carry a lot of ordnance, and absorb hits. The Soviet Union answered with the Su-25 in the same period and for the same reasons that the United States produced the A-10. The two aircraft look different and are engineered differently, but they are answers to an identical question. The Su-25's design priorities were survivability and simplicity. The cockpit is enclosed in a welded titanium bath, protecting the pilot from ground fire. The two engines are separated by the fuselage so that a hit on one is less likely to destroy the other. Fuel tanks are protected and filled with foam to suppress fires. The control system has mechanical redundancy. The airframe is built to be maintained in the field from unpaved strips by conscript ground crews with limited equipment. The result was an aircraft that pilots have nicknamed the Flying Tank, and that Russian crews traditionally call the Grach, the Rook. Almost every design decision in the Su-25 points in the same direction. It is subsonic because supersonic performance would demand a thinner wing, less internal volume, and engines that burn fuel too fast to loiter. It has a straight, thick wing with plenty of hard points because the mission is carrying weight low and slow rather than climbing fast. Its landing gear is heavy and its tires are large because the aircraft was expected to operate from strips that had been cut out of a field with a bulldozer, close enough to the front line that turnaround times could be measured in minutes rather than hours. That last point matters more than it sounds. A close air support aircraft's value depends heavily on how quickly it can respond to a call from ground troops. An aircraft based 400 kilometers to the rear arrives late or not at all. An aircraft based 20 kilometers behind the line arrives while the fight is still happening. The Su-25 was designed to live at the front, take damage there, and be fixed there. Its combat career began in Afghanistan in the 1980s, where it flew enormous numbers of close air support sorties in an environment that suited it almost perfectly. A poorly equipped opponent, no hostile air force, and a mountainous battlefield where slow, low, accurate fire was exactly what ground commanders needed. It went on to serve in dozens of conflicts across the following 4 decades, exported widely, in most cases performing well. Then came February 2022, and an environment nothing in its history had prepared it for. Now, before we get into how this aircraft is actually being used today, if you are enjoying this kind of deep dive into military aviation, hit subscribe. It costs nothing, takes a second, and helps this channel keep making these. The war in Ukraine broke the Su-25's original mission almost immediately. The aircraft was built to fly low and slow over a battlefield, hold position, identify targets visually, and attack them with cannon fire and unguided rockets. That profile assumes an opponent whose air defenses are limited to machine guns and a scattering of shoulder-fired missiles. Ukraine and Russia are both saturated with modern man-portable air defense systems, layered radar-guided surface-to-air missile batteries, and increasingly drones. Loitering over a front line in that environment is not survivable, no matter how much titanium is wrapped around the cockpit. Toughness buys a pilot a chance. It does not buy immunity. The losses reflected that. The Su-25 has been the most heavily lost fixed-wing tactical type of the war. Confirmed Russian Su-25 losses have run to more than 40 aircraft, the highest figure for any fixed-wing tactical type in the conflict. Ukraine has lost a substantial fraction of its own smaller fleet. Aircraft have been brought down by shoulder-fired missiles, by radar-guided systems, and in at least some reported cases by accidents arising from the extreme low altitude flying the mission demands, including collisions with drones and power lines. So the aircraft did not survive by being tough. It survived by having its mission rewritten around it. The first adaptation was tactical. Rather than approaching a target and attacking it directly, Su-25 crews on both sides adopted lofting, flying very low toward the front, pulling into a steep climb at a distance, releasing unguided rockets in a ballistic arc so that they travel far beyond the launch point, then diving away hard before enemy air defenses can respond. This is a compromise and an expensive one. Accuracy collapses. A rocket lobbed on a ballistic trajectory lands where physics puts it, not where the pilot wants it. Crews compensate by firing volume rather than achieving precision. But it keeps the aircraft outside the effective envelope of the most dangerous short-range defenses, which is the whole point. The second adaptation was more significant, and it changed what the aircraft fundamentally is. By mid-2024, Ukraine's Su-25 fleet had exhausted its stocks of unguided rockets, a reflection of just how many sorties these aircraft had flown and how many targets they had been thrown at. The replacement was Western, the French AASM Hammer, a rocket-boosted precision-guided munition. Ukrainian Su-25s were seen carrying and launching them, the first known integration of a Western precision weapon onto the type. The Hammer suits the Su-25 unusually well. It can be released at very low altitude, exactly where the aircraft has its best chance of surviving, and its rocket motor then lofts it upward and outward toward targets well beyond the launch point. Unlike a pure glide bomb, which needs altitude to convert into range, the Hammer generates its own energy. An aircraft that cannot safely climb can still deliver it. The effect on survivability was measurable. Ukrainian Su-25 losses dropped sharply after the tactical overhaul. Of roughly 22 Ukrainian Su-25 losses across the war, only about 3 or 4 occurred in 2024, after the shift away from close rocket attacks toward standoff precision bombing. The approach worked well enough that Ukraine extended the same logic to its MiG-29s, Su-24s and Su-27s, turning a fleet of Soviet-era aircraft into launch platforms for Western-guided weapons. Russia has adapted along different lines. Russian Su-25s continue to fly close attack missions with unguided rockets, typically operating in pairs from bases well behind the border, flying high-low high profiles with external fuel tanks and rocket pods, and enduring the losses that go with it. The upgraded Su-25 SM-3 variant adds satellite navigation and a modern targeting system, extending the type's useful life. Russian pilots have described taking engine hits from shoulder-fired missiles and returning to base, and those accounts are consistent with the aircraft's armor philosophy. There is a hard lesson buried in all of this, and it is not the one people usually draw. The instinct is to say that the Su-25 has been proven obsolete. That is too simple. The aircraft itself performs its original function well. What has been proven obsolete is the mission, not the machine. Low-altitude, close air support over a peer opponent with layered modern air defense is not a survivable activity for any manned aircraft, regardless of how it is built. The same conclusion has been reached painfully about the A-10 in Western Air Forces. What has kept the Su-25 flying is the opposite of what its designers intended. It is not the titanium bath or the redundant systems that explain its presence over Ukraine in 2026. It is that the airframe is available in numbers, that both air forces need every platform they can put in the air across an enormous contested front, that it can carry useful weapons, and that it can be adapted quickly to launch munitions nobody imagined when it was drawn. The aircraft has become a truck, a very tough, very low-flying truck that delivers a modern precision weapon to a release point and then leaves as fast as it can. There is a further irony in that transformation. The armor, the redundancy, the titanium bath around the pilot, all the things that made the Su-25 famous, are largely irrelevant to how it is now being used. An aircraft releasing a standoff weapon from tens of kilometers away and turning immediately for home is not relying on its ability to absorb hits. It is relying on not being in range of anything that could hit it. The features that define the design have become insurance rather than doctrine. And yet, those same features are part of why the airframes are still flyable at all. Aircraft built to survive rough strips, poor maintenance, and battle damage tend to still be around decades later, while more delicate contemporaries have long since been written off. Ruggedness bought the Su-25 the one thing that matters most in a long war of attrition: existence in sufficient numbers, years after the production lines that made it went quiet. That is not the mission it was built for. It is arguably the opposite of the mission it was built for. And it is the reason a design from 1975 is still generating combat sorties in the most heavily defended airspace on the planet. An aircraft comes in below the tree line at a few dozen meters, so low the grass flattens behind it. Analog dials, no stealth, no modern radar. Designed by engineers who are now mostly retired or dead, for a battlefield that no longer exists, against threats that have been superseded 3 times over. It pulls up, releases a weapon built in France 4 decades after the airframe was designed, and disappears back into the terrain. The Su-25 is not surviving because it is invulnerable. Nothing over Ukraine is invulnerable. It is surviving because it was simple enough to change, cheap enough to risk, and available in enough numbers to matter. And because the people flying it stopped asking what the aircraft was designed to do and started asking only what it could still be made to do. That is not obsolescence. That is what adaptation actually looks like when a war refuses to end.